It is time to look at interfaces in Java. This is another one of those confusing things, so maybe you'll watch this video more than once. An interface, and I'm going to, I know this looks like a complicated structure here, but we're just going to go through one thing at a time. Let's look at an interface first. So I clicked on interface. I have an interface called Flyer, and it says this is a very simple and rather ridiculous example of an interface. So nobody would actually create an interface like this. It's just a very oversimplified example of what it is. And here's what an interface is. An interface, and notice how I'm declaring this, public interface Flyer. I'm not saying abstract. It's abstract by default. I'm not saying class. I mean, it's an abstract class by default. And remember, abstract classes are classes that you cannot instantiate. If I had an abstract class called Flyer, I could not actually say new Flyer in a tester somewhere. Well, an interface is an abstract class, but it goes beyond that. It's an abstract class, and each method in the class must be abstract. So an interface is just a list of method, the first line of the method. And again, these are called method signatures. So an interface, notice I'm just listing a bunch of methods here. Public abstract string fly. This is a method called fly, returns a string. And it's an abstract method. Remember, abstract methods are methods with no method body. All right, and so here I have another abstract method, returns a string, land. Great, it takes no input parameters, but that's it. So again, an interface is an abstract class, but it is sort of like abstract to the farthest degree. In other words, there's none of the methods in it have any implementation at all. Whereas if you make a class abstract, the methods are allowed to have implementation. You can have abstract methods, but they're allowed to have implementation. In an interface, one last time, in an interface, all methods must be abstract. So for example, if I said public string land and I provided some implementation here, if I said something like return hi or something like that, it would complain about that. Oh, well, okay, it complains because I did not put the semicolon in the right place. But even if I do, it'll complain and it'll tell me interface methods cannot have body. So you cannot have a method body here. You're only allowed to have the first line, again called a method signature. And as I said before, these are abstract by default, so I don't even have to use the word abstract here. Compile it, you can see it works fine. But usually people write public abstract, whatever it is. All right. Let's look at something which it looks like it's a subclass of an interface, but it's not really. I know this looks like a superclass subclass relationship. It's a little bit different. So here I have a class called bird, and instead of saying extends Flyer, the keyword here is implements Flyer. If you are a subclass, and I hate to use the word subclass, but if you are going to use an interface, you say implements. That's a little bit different than saying extends, right? This is to say something implements an interface is just basically saying that you are going to provide implementation for all of the method signatures in the interface. That's really all it is. So let's take a look at this again. This is on the right side here. This is my interface. It's called Flyer. And I have these two method signatures, fly and land. And again, I don't have to use the keyword abstract. They are abstract by default. So if I am going to say, as I did in the class bird, if I'm going to say that I'm implementing an interface, that means I must provide implementation for all of the methods in the interface. So here I'm providing implementation for fly, flap my wings, for land, on 2 feet, and then I have another method here, I speak, tweet, whatever. Oh, by the way, I do not have any body in my constructor here. That's fine, nothing's happening. I don't have a call to the super class. There is no constructor in Flyer, so nothing happens in this constructor here. I know it's a little silly to have one, but That's my constructor. Anyway, so hopefully this makes sense. If you're going to implement an interface, you have to provide implementation for all of the methods in that interface. And that's it. Fly, land, and I have another method as well. Here I have a method called, a class called plane. Plane also implements flyer. And again, I'm just providing implementation for fly, used by jet engines, land on my wheels. So this is a silly example, but again, the point is an interface, I'm saying this for like the fourth time, an interface is a special class that just has a list of method names, method signatures, really, with no implementation. So here I'm implementing flyer, and I must implement those methods in the class. Okay. I have another interface here called Crime Fighter. It's very silly, I know. A crime fighter is an interface, and it just has one abstract method signature. Fights with. Crime fighter fights with, I guess, some kind of something. I don't know. They all seem to fight crime. Anyway. Underneath that, I have something, another class called Superhero, and this is a little bit different here. It turns out that in Java, you are allowed to implement multiple interfaces. Here I'm implementing these two interfaces, Flyer and Crime Fighter, but you can implement as many interfaces as you like. You're only allowed to extend one superclass. You can only, and actually I could say, public class Superhero extends something else, but implements a bunch of interfaces. You're only allowed to extend one thing, but you can implement as many interfaces as you like. So here I'm implementing Flyer, and I do that by implementing the method fly and land, and I'm implementing Crime Fighter, and so here I have the method implementation fights with, with super strength, because superheroes have super strength, apparently. All right, let's take a quick look at the tester. Some of these things will work, and some of them will not work. So let's just go right down the line here. The first guy says I'm creating a bird Tweety, which is a new bird, and then I'm running these methods in bird, fly, land, speak. This will compile, this will run beautifully, and I'm just going to do this really quick. There should be nothing wrong with that at all. That's terrific. It knows to run the methods in the type of object that it is. In other words, Tweety is a bird. It runs the method in bird. And sometimes they refer to this as polymorphism. Objects know what type of thing they are and know to run the method in the correct class. During runtime, Java determines which method of the same name to use. In other words, it knows to run the method in the bird class. All right. Let's comment this back in here, and let's take a look at the second thing. Okay, so you tell me, you let me know, what do you think? Are you talking to the video right now? Flyer Bob equals new flyer. This is 2 lines. Crime Fighter, Captain Javaman is new Crime Fighter. You think these are allowed? Actually, let's just try one at a time, and the answer is no, they are not allowed. Flyer, remember, interfaces are abstract. They have no method implementation. You're not allowed to instantiate them. You're not allowed to make a new interface directly. Same, of course, with Crime Fighter. Captain Javaman, new Crime Fighter. I'm not allowed to make a new Crime Fighter. You can't make new interfaces or abstract classes, of course. Problem there as well. All right. Let's check out the next one. I'm trying to go quick here. Oops. And the next one, I have a flyer poly equals new bird. Is this allowed? Well, a bird is a flyer. This is like the superclass, subclass kind of relationship. So this is okay. Am I going to have any problems at all here? Yes, and I hope that this makes sense why this is a problem. This is another one of those compile time issues. At compile time, Java looks at the left side of the equal sign and says that poly is a flyer, and flyers do have the fly method and the land method, but remember, they don't have the speak method. Speak was a method in bird, but it was not a method in flyer. Flyer only had fly and land. So it's complaining because at compile time, it thinks that Polly is a flyer. It doesn't realize that it's a bird, and it says, hey, there is no method speak in flyer. And you know, of course, how to fix this. I can fix this by saying, in fact, and you need that second set of parentheses, hey, Polly is in fact a bird, and get past the compiler, and it does beautifully. And of course, I can run this guy. All right, and everything, tweet. Okay, that's great. All right, so let's comment this back in here, and let's take a look at the next one. We're getting there. So I make a new flyer. Jet is a new plane. A plane is a flyer. That's okay. And this should work as long as I only run methods that are in flyer. Yeah, fly land. This should work terrifically. And everything works great. So remember, a flyer has fly and land. And so this runs perfectly well because fly and land are methods in flyer, but when it actually runs, it knows to run the fly and land methods as defined in plane. Again, this is called, I hope you read this again, this is called late or dynamic binding. At runtime, it knows that Jet is a plane and knows to run the methods in plane. All right, getting there? Okay. So, oh, well, I guess I should have, I can uncomment this. This, I hope you know that this will not be allowed. Here, I'm trying to cast Jet to a bird and then say Jet speak, and I will get an error when I try to run this guy, of course. It says, this is a class cast exception. You're not allowed to cast something to some type that it is not. Jet is not a bird. I can't cast it to a bird. All right, let's just comment that guy out. Almost done here. So here I have my last example. Let me just move this up a little bit. So here I have a superhero. Superman is a new superhero. That's okay so far. And can I run Superman fly? Is fly a method in superhero? It is. So is land. So is fights with. So all of this should be fine. And I'll just run this real quick. And everything works beautifully. So again, an interface, I'll open it up again. An interface is an abstract class, but you can think of it as sort of like the most extreme abstract class. It is so abstract that none of the methods are allowed to have any implementation. All the methods in here must be abstract. Anybody that implements an interface, so let's open Bird again. Anybody that implements an interface, here I'm implementing Flyer, must provide implementation for all of the method signatures in that interface. So here my interface has fly and land. I'm providing implementation for fly and land, and you can add additional methods. And finally, interfaces, like the class superhero, interfaces can, or rather classes can implement multiple interfaces. So here I am in superhero and I'm implementing more than one interface. I can implement as many as I want. But in terms of extending something, you're only allowed to extend one thing. So interfaces are sort of maybe a way around around not having multiple inheritance. Sometimes they talk about it. So hopefully this makes some sense. And you're going to have a short project based on interfaces, so hopefully you understand it. All right.